Hey everybody, this is Rami Marks, your Tangled Yogi out here in Northern California. And today we're going to do a really fun tangle. I'm calling it the final rose because it's the end of our growing season out here in Northern California for roses. And my rose garden is starting to come to a close. So that's why I created this piece. So we've got a couple of tangles in here. We've got Spin Rose in here, which, I think it's an offshoot of Trentwith, which was in Inktober this last month. We've got Sqidoo, which is in here. We also have Sand, Swirl, and Tipple, of course. So things that you're going to need for class. You're going to need your handy dandy pencil with no eraser because there are no mistakes in Zentangle. I've been playing around with this Uniball Eye micro pen. I'm loving it. It's a great pen if you're looking to try something as an alternative to the microns. It's got a really nice smooth glide on the page and I'm just really enjoying it. And it's waterproof, which is great, so you can go over it with white and it doesn't lift. That's pretty wonderful. The other thing I'm using is the Uniball Signo white pen. You know it's my favorite. I love it. And then finally, I've got my Faber Castell Pitt pen. I'm loving this pen for puddling because it is it's waterproof and it doesn't lift when you put the white over the top of it. You don't get gray in your white, which is lovely. Okay. Final thing that you'll need, well, I wish you needed it, the Maryland tile from Tangled Yogi. So, you can always go to the website, tangledyogi.com, and pick up your Maryland tile. This is on super smooth archival paper. I'm really enjoying working with these. I've been doing a bunch of them, and I think they're just really great tiles. Lots and lots of fun. If you don't have a diamond tile, you can always make a diamond on your page and just follow along. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so if you know me, you know that I like to get centered before we get started with our class here. So go ahead and take a comfortable seated position in your chair and lean back so that you are resting into your chair. Allow your feet to make connection with the floor and allow your spine to grow comfortably tall without becoming hard. Softening in your facial features. Allowing your shoulders to melt away from your ears. Let's go ahead and take a nice deep breath all the way into the upper chest. And let it go with a sigh. Relaxing through the rib cage, the belly, the hips, the thighs, the knees, the calves, ankles, and feet. Allowing your shoulders to melt away from your ears, softening in your upper arms and in your lower arms, your wrists, and your fingers. Allowing your entire body to be at ease right now in this moment. And let's work with the breath here just for a little bit. Go ahead and breathe into the count of 4. And exhale to the count of 4. Inhaling through the nose to the count of 4. And exhaling through the nose to the count of 4. Inhaling for 4. And exhaling for 4. And just letting your breath return to its natural pace and see if there's a little bit more spaciousness in there. Noticing on the inhalation the coolness in the nostrils. Noticing in the exhalation the heat in the nostrils. Inhaling coolness and exhaling heat. Taking one more deep breath right here. Exhaling it out. Beginning to wiggle in the fingertips and wiggle in the toes. And when you feel ready, gently blinking the eyes open. And let's get ready to tangle. Okay, so let's get ourselves started here. So I'm going to grab my pencil and I'm going to just move this guy off to the side here. And we're just going to begin with putting a dot in each corner of our diamond here. Let's make sure that we're on camera. Woohoo. Okay, so now all I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and connect our dots. We're just doing this the regular Zentangle method here, just by creating a little border. And you can see I've got a little wobble in my border, and that's a-okay with me. Remember, we're not striving for perfection here. We're just enjoying the ride. Yeah. So once you've got your border set, go ahead and take your pen and if you're going to use a micron, grab your micron. If you're going to use whatever pen you like to tangle with, go ahead and grab it. Cat's got my tongue. All right, let's talk a little bit about this next part. So I'm going to blow this up here. I'm going to do some demonstration on how to do spin rows. Now, for some of you, you might find spin rows a little bit confusing. So I'm going to do a demonstration of Trent width first. And if you decide you just want to go with Trent width, you can absolutely do that. So Trent width, and I believe it is Trent width. Trent width is really easy. What you do is you just do a half moon, and then you do a half moon from the other side, and you intersect. Notice how there's a space up at the top where these two are not intersecting, and then you go ahead and join them. And then you'll do the whole thing all over again. So you'll go half moon, and then you'll go half moon and intersect, right? And then you'll go ahead and cap it off. Same thing again right in here. So just a half moon where you intersect, and then you go and you create that. So if you really like Trent width, that's a really great alternative. It's a very easy way to do a rose, and you can use that as your center. Now the spin rose is a little bit more complex, and it reminds me a lot of Rick's paradox. So here I am, I've got this really nice circle here. I want to make that nice and big for you so you can really see what I'm up to here. And all I'm going to do to start the spin rose is I'm just going to start from the top, and I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to hit the side, and then I'm going to round off and hit the other side, and then I'm going to come back up. Now watch, I am not going to go back to the beginning point. I'm going to go off center. And then I'm going to jump down, and I'm going to go off center again. So notice that I'm not going into the corner. I'm going away from it. Now I'm going to come over to this side, but I'm not going into the corner. I'm off center still. Going over here once again, off center, not going into the corner. Coming down, staying away from the corner. Coming over. Once again, so you're just staying off center, off of the corner. So you can see that that's developing a really nice, complex kind of spin rose. Yeah. So then once I've gotten to the center, all I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of a spiral in there, and that is my rose. All right. So you understand the idea behind spin rose. So you can decide now if you want to do Trent width, if that feels more doable for you, or if you want to do spin rose. Okay? All right, so now I'm going to flip this guy over so that we don't have a crazy little thing there. The other thing to keep in mind is this is going to be an asymmetrical tangle here. So I want you to recognize that it doesn't have to be perfect. You can really let your artistic self kind of free flow here. So I'm going to come in towards this upper left-hand corner, and I'm going to do a circle about a size of a $1/2. And for those of you who are not familiar with a $1/2, it's about 1 inch to 2 inches in diameter here, probably 1.5 inches is what I would say that is. So you can see that I'm up and over in this left-hand side here. So now I'm going to start my spin rows. So if you want to do Trent width, you can do Trent width. Otherwise, here we go. So I'm going to blow this up nice and big for you so you can see what I'm up to here. And all I'm going to do is start from the top, go down, over, come back and up, and then watch. I'm not going back to the beginning again. I'm going to come down, but I won't go to the corner. I'll stay off base. I'll come over to this side, but I won't go to the corner. I'll stay off base. I'm coming over to this side, not in the corner, off base. So now you've got the idea, right? You're just going to continue to stay off base as you roll around inside of that little triangle shape. Now I'm starting to come to the end here, so I'm going to go ahead and put my little spiral in the center, and there is the beginning of my rose. All right? So if you need to pause me here, this is a great place to do it. Otherwise, we're going to keep on rolling. Okay, so here we go. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start to build on the outside of this. Now, if you've ever done henna drum with me before, you know that henna drum has this really neat wavy line. So henna drum is basically where we have a crescent moon, and then we've got these little antennas that are poking up off the top of it. Hopefully I'm on camera here. And then we get this really neat kind of wavy line that goes over the top that creates the petal for henna drum. And so when I was doing this particular tangle, that came to mind. So here we go. All I'm going to do is I'm going to come up and out just a little bit, and then I'm going to just do a wavy line. And notice that I stayed inside of my border. I didn't feel the need to break the border, so that's fine. Now I'm going to jump off the side of this petal, and I'm going to do another wavy line, just like so. And then I'll do another wavy line. And then finally I'll do another one. Now notice that this one looks like it's going to jump off of the page, but I'm just going to let it stay within range. Now if you feel like you want to add just a little bit more to your rose, you could always come off of the side and build it out a little bit. So I could come up in here and just add a couple more waves to make it look a little bit larger. I could go in here. So it's really just all about the wavy line, which is so fun. So there you have it. That is Spin Rose. So if you need to pause me here to catch up, go ahead and pause me. Otherwise, we're just going to keep on rolling. Okay, so here we go. We're going to start to build off of the bottom of this rose here. This is where the mandala started to grow out of the piece here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to come down here and make a line that's going to come pretty much down, probably I would say that's about 1.5 inches, yeah? Almost 2 inches. I'm gonna say that's probably 2 inches. That feels like 2 inches to me. And then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna cross just like so. And then finally I'll divide one more time. And then I'll go again one more time. So we get this really kind of fun star that's kind of made its way into the piece here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to round off the star. So I'm just going to go ahead and round off and create these really nice petals. Now notice that I don't have a whole lot of space here. I'm just going to go ahead and let that round off. And then I'll come in here and pretend like I'm rounding off because it's right on the edge there. And then I'll come over here and do the same thing. So now we've got this really nice kind of spinning flower. I just really like that a lot. I think it's beautiful. So once you've done that, we're going to go ahead and build off of the top of that too. So I've got this really nice area where the heart-like shape is. You can see there's a heart-like shape right in here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to build off of it by putting in a triangle and then letting it come in to hit the rose. And then I'll do another triangle off the side and I'll let it come in and hit the side of the border there. I'm going to do the same thing over here. So I'm just coming over and letting it hit. And then once again, coming over and letting it hit. And then once again, coming over, letting it come in. And then finally letting that triangle go off to the side. And you can see that it does have kind of an off-center appeal to it, which is really kind of neat. Now, once I've got that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to arc off one last time in between, and I'll do a little bit of a half moon. And then once I've done that half moon, I'm going to go ahead and give it a little bit of weight. Can you see how I'm rejoining where it starts? So I started it where it starts and I'm ending it where it starts. You can see they're connecting there. So I'll do the same thing over here now. I'm going to make this nice and big so you can really see what I'm up to. So I'll come over here first since this looks like it's an easy spot. So I'll come over here, I'll do my half moon, and then notice where I'm starting. I'm starting right from that point, and I'm coming right back in again. We'll do this one right over here. We'll give it some weight. And then the same thing over here. Watch, it's going to go ahead and it's going to hit that rose. And voila. Now you can see I've got a little space down in here that I can work with. So I can go ahead and do a little half moon and let it run right off the page. And then go ahead and give it a little bit of weight. So once you've got that, go ahead and catch up with us. And if you need to pause me here, go ahead and do so. Okay. So I've got these two little characters here in the middle of my piece, and now we're going to start to add on a little bit of the Sqidoo. So what that's going to look like is we're going to come up here towards the top, and we're going to add the Sqidoo in here by coming off of this area right in here, and I'm going to make that nice and big for you here. So I'll come into this corner right here, and all I'm going to do is use that as my beginning point, and I'm going to land square onto that rose. I'll do the same thing right over here. All we're doing is making a leaf-like shape, like so. So you can see there is my beginning leaf shape. And I'm just imagining that the other part of the leaf is connected to the rose itself. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come across. I'm going to do one line, and it looks kind of like a lazy S, right? And then I'm going to do another line right underneath it. Now, there are some people that just do a singular line on Sqidoo. I tend to do it a little bit differently so that it gets a really nice clean edge. So now what we're going to do is we're going to come into these little leaf-like shapes, because you can see there's a leaf-like shape in here and one in here. All I'm going to do is aura inside of that leaf-like shape nice and cleanly, and then I'll come over here and I'll do the same thing right in here. So there is our first Sqidoo. Now, my teacher taught me to work in threes because she said it was interesting for the eye. So we're going to throw a couple of Sqidoos in here, and it depends on your composition. If your composition doesn't have a whole lot of room, you'll have to determine where your Sqidoos are going to go. So I'm going to put a little Sqidoo right over here, and I'm just going to jump off the side of this rose to do it. So here I go. I'm going to go ahead and add a little leaf-like shape right in here, and this is a little bit smaller than the last one. So there's my little leaf-like shape. All I'm going to do is create that nice soft line right in there. And then I'll come in and I will aura inside of that leaf-like shape. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side here. So I'll come up and into the piece and I'll aura right in there. There's my second Sqidoo. Now I have room for a Sqidoo right over here, so I'm going to do that right in this corner here. So this is where I said your artistic license is going to come right in. So I'm going to come in. And you can see that my point went off the page. That's just fine with me. I'm okay with that. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that S-like shape. I'm going to turn my tile to make it easy for myself here. And I'm going to go ahead and just cut across. And then I'll do it again. And then I'll go ahead and I will aura inside of that leaf-like shape. Now you can see in here I'm going to have to let my artistic license take hold. But there is the third Sqidoo, which really frames up that rose quite nicely, I think. So now, if you need to go ahead and pause me, this is a great place to pause me and catch up to us. Figure out where you want to put your leaves. Have fun with it. Let's just get loose and really have a good time with this asymmetrical tangle. Okay, so here we go. We're going to add a little bit more dimension to the piece. I'm actually going to turn my piece upside down. Well, there is no right side or upside down to Zentangle. It just is how it is. I'm going to add a little bit of sand swirl into the piece here. And I'm just going to blow this up so that you can really see what I'm up to here. So I'm up in this tip here of the diamond. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to come up and over an arc in, and I'm going to put in some sand swirl. So I'll go ahead and I'll puddle, and really sand swirl is just auraing around a fescue. So this line right here with the little teardrop, that's called fescue. And then all we're going to do is we're going to aura it. So you can see that I'm on the inside, and I'm going to connect to the fescue here. And I'm just going to go up and around and drop down. I'm going to go up into that little spot where we started and back and around. Now notice I'm going to hit my border, so I'm going to have to stop there a little bit. I might be able to get down that side just a little bit more. And then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep working inside of the border. And it's going to create this really neat echo of a line. So I'm just going around and creating that really interesting feel to the piece. I might just go over here and add a little bit more. So there's our first sand swirl, which I really like. Now I think I've got another spot for sand swirl over here. So I'm going to turn my piece and I'm going to look for my spot that I want to do. And I'm just going to go up, add my little fescue. There it is. Nice little fescue there. And then all I'll do is I'm going to aura around. So I'm just starting on one side and finishing on the other. Starting on one side, finishing on the other. Now notice how I had to stop right there because that's where my border was. And I'll go ahead and do one more right here. And voila. Really nice little sand swirl right there. And if you want to let it echo out a little bit more, you're totally welcome to do so. And because I said I like to work in threes, I think I'm going to flip this guy over and I'm going to do another one right over here. So I'll come over here, add a little sand swirl, and go for it. Now you can see that I'm not going to be able to go all the way up and around. I have to stop. So what I love about this is that it just creates so much interest in the piece just by being off the page a little bit. It's like, where did it go? Where is it? What's it doing? Which I love. So now I've got all this kind of neat motion moving in the piece, which I really, really love. So now, if you need to pause me, this is a great place to pause me and figure out where you want to put your sand swirls. and I'll see you in a minute. Take your time, relax, and enjoy what you're doing. Well, if you know me, you know that I do enjoy doing the tangle tipple. And I like to do my tipple in clusters. And you can see that we've got these really nice spaces that have kind of made their way into the piece. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to find the spaces where I want to put my tipple and just start to throw them in. Now, the thing that I want to say about tipple is that you want to make sure that your tipple varies in size, because if they're all the same, it just tends to be a little bit boring for the eye. So there's 3 right there. And I think I'm going to come down in here and do another 3. So I'm going to just jump right in here. I'm going to go 1. This guy's going to be a big one. Then I'm going to go 2. And then I'm going to go 3. And then let's do one more set. Where can we put that last set? I think I'm going to go right over in this corner right here. So I'm just going to go 1 nice big tipple. I'll do a little baby tipple right over here. And then I'll do a teeny tiny little tipple right over there. So there you have it. I mean, that's pretty much what we're up to here on this tangle. We've got this really nice, interesting kind of mishmash of tangles all together. It doesn't have to be a certain way. This is really getting down to the whole idea of just drawing and using your intuition, which I really enjoy. Now, one thing that I would like to say about this is that I want to do some puddling, and that is going to be the next portion of our piece. So if you need to pause me here, this is a great place to pause me. Otherwise, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to grab my Pitt pen here. And I love this pen because it has such a nice brush on it. Let's see here. Grab that, get that going. So here you can see that it has a really nice tip on it. It's just a really great brush pen. I really enjoy this pen a lot. I'm going to see if I can use my black one though. I grabbed my gray one. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to come in around the areas that had the tipple, and I'm going to puddle around them. So you can see that I'm just coming in here, and part of the reason why I didn't outline the border was because I knew that I was going to put a lot of black here. Now I have a student that always gets very upset with me when we do a lot of puddling. She always says to me, I'm not good at puddling. But Pamela, you're getting better every day, right? I'm talking to you, Pamela. All right, so we're just going to go ahead and we're going to start to puddle around the tipple here. And you can see that I'm being very cautious with my my sand swirl, that I'm not going to go into the sand swirl. But I will come up near it. So you can see that I've got this nice little space in here. So I'm going to go ahead and puddle around the sand swirl in here. And I'm going to puddle around it in here. And I'm going to come up to the tip as well and add a little bit of puddling in there. And you can already see that that black is starting to give this a lot of gravity. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to do the same thing right over here. You can see that I'm near the sand swirl and I'm in between where the mandala is and the sand swirl. And I'll go ahead and I'll add a little bit right here on the edge. So wherever you're feeling like you need to add a little bit of that puddling, you can go ahead around your piece and do that, which is really, really great fun. I love putting black into a piece because it just gives it so much depth. So you can see that I'm just going around, adding some more. And then I'll come down in here and do the same. So I've got this whole area in here. So I'm going around my Sqidoo, and I'm also going around the sand swirl and getting in there and adding that black. And you can see why I like that petal pen so much, because in such a short amount of time, I've been able to put in a lot of that black. It defines the space and really makes it interesting. And then I'll come down over here and do the same, getting right around that area. I'm going to flip my tile to make it easy for my hand here, and you can already see that it's developing quite nicely. And there we go. So I'll just come up around that Sqidoo and in between the rows there. And remember, yours doesn't have to look like mine. Yours should look like yours. I really want you to get into the idea of letting this be a random piece, that it has the tangles in it, but it doesn't have to be exactly the same as mine. I want you to go with your artistic merit here. All right, so now go ahead and take your time, finish up your puddling in those areas where you think you need it, and we'll get back together soon. I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so I want to start to work on that little mandala flower that we have in here. I'm talking about this guy right in here. I'm going to blow this up a little bit. We're going to add a little internal star on him, just because I think it will make it interesting. So what I'm going to do is inside of each petal here, I'm going to do a little triangle. So I'm going to come in and just do a triangle on each side. Can you see how that just formed? And then I'll come over to the next one and I'll do the same. Now you want to be mindful that the triangles are the same size. So I'm just going in and adding a triangle into each of those petals. And you can see that I'm really trying to be aware of how much I put in there, right? So that gave me a really nice feeling in there. And I'm going to come into the center now, and I'm going to add a little bit of a dot right in the center. And that just gave that so much interest. I love how that looks. I just think it gave it a lot. And then we'll build off of that by coming off of the tip of each star. And we're just going to put a little line and a dot. So it's almost like fescue, but just a little bit different. You can see I'm just building off. Really just kind of flying by the seat of my pants, you know? I want you to feel like you can do this just when you're sitting and waiting at a meeting or an appointment. You can just kind of have fun and play and create something really fun just by letting your imagination run wild. So that's what we're going to do inside of that mandala, and we'll come back to that with a little bit of white later. So go ahead and take a moment, finish up what we just did, and we are going to start to build color. So I want you to start to think about what color you want your rose to be. All right, I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so one of the things that I talk to my students about a lot is that whenever I do a Zentangle, I never like to do it the same way twice, because trying to recreate something that you did a day earlier is really kind of pointless. You're not the same person that you were that day. So you want to kind of change things up. And you can see in my piece here, we have the same players, but they're just kind of moved around in a different way. So over here, you can see that my sand swirl was down at the bottom, and I do have my sand swirl there, but I was able to move it around inside the piece a little bit more. And I really like that it's different, because today I'm different. And so really, I wouldn't want to recreate the same thing twice. And that's why for this one, I'm actually going to use a different color for my rose. I think I'm going to use a really nice turquoise for my rose this time. And if you've ever been with me before, you know that I talk about color theory just a little bit here. So we've got our light, our medium, and our dark, and each pencil always has those three colors. It's just a matter of how well they show it. And because I'm using a color that has very light viscosity to it, it's not going to show up very well. So I've got this really nice blue that's a little bit darker that I'll be able to add to that particular piece to give it a little bit of depth when it comes to shading. So let's start with our color here. And I'm just going to bring that right in there since we're going to work on the rose. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start to build on this rose here. And you can see that I'm going to add my color, but look at how far back I am on my pencil. So my hand is not up here, it's back here. So I'm going to come in with that lightest tension, and you can see that my pencil is working in a circular like motion. Everybody see that? So that's going to give me kind of a soft, foggy feel with the color, and you can see that I'm just working on getting that all over the rose. It's almost like I'm a kid in preschool. I'm just not even paying attention to the lines. I'm just going all the way around that rose and doing the whole thing in without any care in the world. Just getting in there and really filling up the space with that beautiful turquoise color. Now you can choose any color you like. I'm just going with turquoise because it's one of my favorite colors and I love to work with it. So there you have it. You can see that that turquoise is now filled into the space. So what we're going to start to do is we're going to do some shading. And the shading is going to help to develop a little bit of the depth of the piece. So you can see around the edges here of that rose, I want to make it look like these petals are on top of these petals. So I'm just going to come up a little bit further on my pencil so you can see that I've come up towards the top just a little bit. And I'm using medium tension, so I'm applying a little bit more pressure on the pencil. And I'm working around those petals, but notice that I'm leaving light out here. This is that light color that I started with. So I'll go around and add that really nice kind of soft medium color and leave the edges nice and light. Developing that in there and really getting in there. And you can see that when I start to work around the circle, I'm letting the circle have the shape. So you can see that the inner circle is just creating kind of a nice soft shadow. Getting up in here. And then up in here. Really just letting that roll a little bit. Coming out to that outer edge. Notice how I've left that all white. Now we're going to start to work with that inner part here. If you need to pause me, that's a great place to pause me so that you can catch up. Otherwise, I'm going to keep on rolling here. So once you start to get into that inner rose, what we're going to start to do is we're going to start to sit right on the lip of the paradox here. So you remember how we were moving around. Now, if you were working with Trentwith, you'll do the same concept. So you'll just sit right on the lip of it. So I'm just going to keep coming around and use that medium tension. So here, this is a perfect place. If you were using Trentwith, you can see there's the shading right there for Trentwith. And then I'll do the same thing right here at the bottom. Now, I want this rose to start to look like the petals are sitting on top of each other. So you see how I'm just sitting on the lip of it, but I'm leaving the white towards the edge. I'm still doing the same thing right in here. It's all just sitting right on the lip of each of those petals. Coming up in here. And same thing right over here. And then finally, once I come into the inside, I'm just going to go a little bit on one side and a little bit on the other side. That's just going to develop a little bit of depth. Same thing over here, same thing over there. So if you need to pause me here, this is a great place to do it. Otherwise, I'm going to keep on going. So you can see that I've got my darker blue color in my hand. Now, if you've started with a color that is darker in nature, so if it's like a heavy purple or a blue or a green or a pink, that is really, really rich in color, then you can just stick with what you're using. But if you're working with a really light color, say you're working with an orange or a yellow, you may want to add a little bit of orange to that yellow, or you may want to add a little bit of red to that orange, or you may want to add a little bit of purple to that pink. So if you feel like you need a little bit of extra depth, go for it. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to start to stay really close to that black line, and I'm just very lightly coming in with that darker color. Now the reason for that is because that darker color is already dark, I don't have to push hard. Now if you're working with your original color, you will have to push a little bit harder to get a little bit of that depth. But let's try not to lose that medium tension. Okay? So you can see there's my medium right there. I'm leaving that space there, but I'm just hugging that dark line with my dark pencil. And you can see that that pencil is not moving back and forth like this. It's moving in a circular like motion so that I'm getting kind of a foggy feel with that shading. It's very soft. So I'm just going to come in here and continue to work that nice soft tension on that darker color. Unless you're working with your original color, then you're pushing a little harder. And I'm just rolling through all these areas in here. Really fun. I love this rose. I just think it's such a great rose to work with. Spin rose is one of my favorite tangles. So I'm working through there. Working up in here. Coming all the way around, and you can really see that it's starting to get that very incandescent, glowy feeling on that rose. I'm working with those Prismacolor pencils that I love so much because they're such rich colors. Working my way out, and then finally coming down in here and getting a little bit more depth on that rose. Pretty fun. Love, love, love. All right, so I'm going to come down in here, get a little bit on the sides. You can see that I'm just bringing it in from side to side in here. And then I think I'll add a little bit of depth right in the center of the rose here, just to give us a little place for our eye to land. Really nice and glowy and soft. Now, if you feel like you've lost your medium tension, you can always come back in with that original color and move your way out just a little bit so that you get a little bit of softness there. I feel like I kind of lost a little bit of that medium tension when I started putting in that darker color. So I'm just rolling out a little bit of that beginning color just to get it to pop. Really beautiful. So if you need to pause me, this is a great place to do it. I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so here we are. And I'm going to start to work now with the Sqidoo, which is these guys right in here. And I want to talk about this just for a quick second because I'm noticing that all the leaves in my area are starting to turn brown, and I know that people get really sad when all the beautiful fall colors are gone, but I really do love those pretty neutral colors, and so I'm going to be using a couple of browns that I have. I've got this kind of nice pumpkin brown, and then I've got a terracotta brown that I'm going to work with. Now, your leaves could be green, they could be orange, they could be red, however you want to do it. Let your creative intuition just really let your creative intuition rule how you choose your colors here today. So I'm going to start by using that lightest color right in here. And I've got this really kind of nice soft brown. And now I'm filling up that space, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to start to add now that heavy depth of color. So here comes that nice medium tension. But now if I press hard, it's not going to make any difference because that color does not have a lot of viscosity to it. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to add a little bit of that terracotta right in at the bottom. And look at how beautiful that looks next to that turquoise. Woo-wee! I like it. So the next part is that I'm going to go up towards the top here. So I'll come in and I'll create some of that really beautiful terracotta color once again, that pumpkin-y, orangey brown. And then I'll go with that medium tension right up at the top here. And then now I'm going to add more of that beautiful rich terracotta. And you can see that that gives it quite the glow. Isn't that gorgeous? I just love that. So we're going to look at all of our Sqidoos and do the same thing. So I'm going to come here over on the side and start to add it in here on the side. Same thing. Adding a little bit of that heavier tension right up on this corner, a little bit of heavier tension right up on this corner. And then I'll go ahead and I'll shade in with a little bit more. And I'll shade in with a little bit more over here. You can see that this is really starting to come together quite quickly with that color. I'm going to go over to the opposite side. One of the things that I've been doing lately is challenging myself to use colors that I don't normally use. And you'll know because the color pencils that you have in your box, some of them will be short and some of them will be very long. And so you want to grab those longer pencils and put them to use because those colors, even though we wouldn't normally go for them, really offer us a chance to explore in a way that we wouldn't have the opportunity. It gets us out of our comfort zone and teaches us new things. We try new things. So there you have it. If you need to pause me right here, this is a great place to pause me because we have our Sqidoos almost done. Okay, so I'm just going to work in that central channel that we have for the Sqidoo here. So you can see that I've got this nice little block right in here, and I'm just going to come in and add that nice light pumpkin color, and then I'll do a little bit of the medium tension on the outside edges there, and then I'll grab that terracotta and I'll go ahead and give that a little bit of depth. So you can go around to your other Sqidoos and do the same. So I'm going to come right here and do it right here. And just bring it on in there. And then I'll go ahead and I will add a little bit of that extra terracotta on the outside edge. Just so nice. And then I'm going to go ahead and come over to this side. Now I notice that I have a little opportunity in here. There is no middle channel really there. So I might just leave that alone. It's okay with me that it has its own thing going on. I'm not going to worry about it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to shift out here. And we're going to start to look at our mandala piece in here. This nice, interesting little flower that kind of took bloom over there. And think about the colors that you want to see in that particular piece. Now, I know for myself that I like to carry color a lot. It's something that just speaks to me. So what I think I might do is I might take that terracotta that I was using in the Sqidoo over here and bring it into the mandala in here. So I'm just going to start by bringing in, with very light tension, that really nice little star into fruition. So here I go, I'm bringing that in, I'm getting it started. And then once I've got that nice lightness in towards the center here, I'm going to start to bring a little bit of that medium tension right around that circle. So we start to get a little bit of depth around that circle. You can see But that started to give that a little bit of depth. And then finally, I'll come in with the terracotta and just add a little bit more depth right around that little circle. So it's already got a little bit of interest to it. It's bringing you in towards the center. So if you need to pause me, go ahead and pause me. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep on going here. So I think for me, one of the colors that I would really like to see come into the picture is a really nice kind of light purple. I love seeing those kind of colors come together here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with this really nice soft purple, and I'm going to start to shade it in. I just want to make sure that I'm not repeating myself. That's good. I am not repeating myself. So I'm just going to go in and start to shade that flower with the lightest tension all the way around. So you go ahead and shade all the way around in that inner circle, and I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so you can see that I've done that light shading inside of the petals here. Now I'm going to start to use some of that medium tension to develop a little shadow around that star that's in the center. So you can see that I'm just building out using some of that medium tension. I'm just having some fun with it. Going all the way around and really getting in there. And you can see that that starts to build a glow around that star. Isn't that lovely? It's starting to build that glow. And then once you've done that, see if you can start to fade it off just a little bit so that you don't have a heavy line of demarcation around that star. It's very easy to get that really strong line, but we want to soften it up a little bit. So all I'm doing is I'm just lightening up my hand just a little bit and fading off into that petal, kind of blurring out the line, if you will, just by working in a circular-like motion and kind of softening it up. See how that's happening? It's really getting kind of a nice soft appeal to it, which I just adore. Okay, so there you have it. Go ahead and finish up yours, and we're going to start to work in these little triangle pieces in just a moment. So go ahead and think about what color you want to see in your triangle piece, and I'll see you soon. Okay, so here we are. We're going to start to work inside of these triangles, and some of you know that I really love seeing graphite next to color. I just think it's very elegant looking. Unfortunately for me, I'm left-handed, and so if I use graphite, it'll end up all over the side of my hand. So one of the tricks that I learned early on was Prisma has a really great color. It's their 70% gray, their warm gray, and it is one of my favorite pencils to work with when I'm looking for a gray. And so I'm just going to jump right into these little triangles here and start to fill them in with that really soft gray color. And you can see that it looks a lot like graphite. It's such a great color, especially for left-handed people. So lefties, take note. And what I'm going to do on the sides of the triangle is that I'm going to start to build a little bit of that medium tension right on the side. This is just like how Rick and Maria teach us to shade when we're working with the graphite here. And then all I'm going to do is when I get to the outer edges, I'm going to add a little bit of heavier tension right on that outer edge, just like so. So it starts to give a lot of dimension to that triangle. Isn't that so neat? It kind of has a metallic feel to it, which I really like. So I'm just going to go ahead and come right in here and do the same thing again. So I'm going in with my lightest tension and filling in that little bit of that triangle. And then once I have the triangle on the outside edges, I'm going to go darker, leaving the light in towards the center, and I'll go dark over here. Once again, light on the inside, and then I'll go ahead and I will add a little bit of depth just on those outer edges to really make that triangle pop. So I really love the way that's starting to feel. So go around to all of your triangles and see if you can put that in there, and then I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so you remember how I always tell you to try something new? I'm going something new. Here's a color I don't use very often. It's a really bright chartreuse green, and I've got a really pretty forest green nearby that I'm going to use. I don't use this color very often. Let's find out how this is going to work. So I'm just going to come in here to this petal and start to lay down some of that chartreuse green. Ooh, that's cool. See what happens when you choose a color that you wouldn't normally go after? You learn something new every day. So I've got this really nice bright green that I'm using inside of these petals in here. And what I'm going to do with this is, because I know that I won't be able to see that medium tension, I'll just get into those petals, and then I'm going to start to use some of that forest green. So I've got this forest green here, and I'm going to blow this up so you can really see what I'm up to. I'm going to add now some of that really soft color into that chartreuse color, so you can see that that's really building quite a beautiful green in there. So I'm really going light tension, nothing too strong. Ooh, that is really cool. I think I have a new favorite color. How about that? And so what's going to happen now is I'm going to use a little bit of that heavier tension right in at the point where you can see where the petal meets the other petals here. And so it'll really give it a nice glowing feel. So I'm just really getting in there and adding some of that color into it. It's a real fun one, this one. So I'm getting down in there, starting with that lighter tension, and then I'm going to go ahead and make it nice and dark. That really has a strong presence in the piece. I really like that a lot. How cool is that? A color that I normally wouldn't go for, and it just pops. So now I've got these little edges in here. And I'm going to take that forest green and I'm going to very, very lightly dip into those edges. But notice how I'm leaving the center white in here. Make that nice and big for you so you can really see it. So I'm making that center piece white, and then on the edges, I'll add just a little bit of depth. So once again, coming over to this next one, adding a little bit of softness into the edges, and then adding a little bit of that heavier edginess right on the tip. So there it is. Really just making that mandala flower pop. And we'll come over here and do the same thing on this side. What fun. So cool. Loving that. Woo woo. All right, so go ahead and finish that up, and I will see you in a minute. Okay, so here we are, and I'm going to start to work with our sand swirl that we have in here. Now you'll notice that I'm going to take the color that was in here and I'm going to carry it into my sand swirl. So what that's going to look like is I'm going to come into the sand swirl and just put some of that purple into the sand swirl. And once again, you can see why I didn't add the definition on the side of the borders here. It's going to look so neat having it be just with the color, not with the hard line. So I'm in there with that nice purple color, And now I'm going to add a little bit of depth to it. So you can see I've got these lines that are going vertically and these lines that are going horizontally. So we want to make it look like there's a little bit of shadow in there. So I'm coming in and I'm adding a little bit of that medium tension in there, creating that shadow. And now I'm going to go back in with my heaviest depth, pushing a little bit harder with that pencil and just letting that give that such a nice shadow. Yeah. Then I'm going to come down in here and do the same thing. I'm just going to go ahead and give that a little bit of medium tension right here. I'll leave a little bit of lightness in here, and now I'm going to give a little bit of depth at the top. Once I've done that, I'll give a little bit of that heaviest tension right towards the bottom and a little bit of that heaviest tension on both sides here. And you can see that that starts to develop a really interesting shadow. So now I'm going to start to move around and do these other pieces. So I've got this guy right in here, and I'll start to bring some of that purple into this particular sand swirl, getting right in there, and then adding some of that shading in towards the centerpiece here, doing some of that medium shading first, and now I'm doing some of that heavier shading. And then I'll get in towards the outside as well, and then add a little bit of heavier shading on just the tip of it. And then I might come up towards the top here and add a little bit more into the top just to give it some dimension. And then add a little bit of that heavier shading in towards the edge of the border just to give it a little bit more depth. And then I'll flip my tile and I'll come over to the opposite side and I'll do the same thing. So I'm just coming in, filling it in, adding some of that purple all the way through the sand swirl. And then I'll start to add some of that depth once again into it, get some of that medium and then some of that really heavy dark tension going. And you can see that it's really helped to unify the whole piece and give it a little bit of direction. So as I pull out here, you can start to see that just by using that same color from in here out here, it gave it a real unifying feel. I might even come back into the inside of this mandala flower here and add a little bit of that heavier tension just right around the inside of that mandala, just to give it a little bit more pop. It just kind of felt like it was a little bit bland, and so I just wanted to give it a little bit more of a pop. So you can see that that's giving it more of a radiating feel. So go ahead and finish up your sand swirl, add a little bit of pop into that mandala, and then, or mandala, sorry, and then we're going to start to work on our tipple in a minute. Okay, so we're going to start to work on the tipple here. And in my first piece, one of the things that I did was I just used a unifying color throughout the tipple. So you can see all the tipple are the same color as that mandala flower that I did in the last one. But I think for this one, I'd like to do something a little bit different. I'd like to do a technique that I call gumballing out. And gumballing out means I'm going to take all the colors from this piece and I'm going to put them into the tipple itself. Now I'm going to start with the chartreuse because I really want to see more of it in the piece. And so we're going to get random again. Random just seems to be the theme of this tangle here that we're doing today. So I'm coming in down here and I'm going to add that chartreuse really nice and close to the blue rose. And then I think what I'll do is I'll come up here and I'll add a little bit of the chartreuse near this purple sand swirl, and I think I'll add it over here as well. Now you'll notice that I'm staying away from the chartreuse. I'm not going to bring the chartreuse on top of the chartreuse over there. I want to give it some variation. And all I'm doing is I'm coming back in with that forest green and I'm just shading a little bit on one side. So you can see that I've left a little bit of light over here, and I just did a little bit of medium and a little bit of dark. So I'll come up and I'll do the same thing over here. Now I'm going to change color, and that's where gumballing out is going to get its name, right? So I've got now my turquoise in my hand, and I'm going to come over to this particular tipple, and I'm going to start to add to that. And you can see that all I'm doing is giving it a little bit of coloring, and then I'm going to do a little bit of medium. And notice that I'm leaving the white in here, yeah? And I'll take some of that darker blue now, and I'll add some of that darker blue into that tipple. And then I think I'll come over here and add some of that really nice turquoise in over here. Now, so there's a method to my madness here, right? So there's no turquoise over here. So I know that I'm not going to get a confusing feel of having a lot of turquoise in the piece if I start to vary it away from where I see the color, right? So now I can look at it and go, okay, I have turquoise here, so I don't want to put my turquoise over here, but I could put it right there. So I'll come in and I'll put some of that turquoise right here. I'll add some of that darker blue. I'm going to make sure that I'm on camera here. Getting some of that darker blue. So now what I have is I've got a few places where I can start to add some of that purple that I had. So I've got maybe right here a good spot to put some of that purple. So that idea of gumballing out is still working for us here. And I'm just going to go ahead and give that a little bit of depth right on that outside edge. And then up here I can do that purple as well, because I'm not going to be touching anything that's purple. I'm just going to come in here. Now here's my quandary. Can you see that guy right there? He is all by his lonesome. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a little bit of that brown and add some of that brown in there and give it just a touch of that turquoise, and then that, or rather that terracotta, and then I don't have to worry about that color so much. Pretty cool to add all those different color gumballs throughout the whole piece. It just gives the piece a really nice, fun, funky feel. If you need to pause me here to finish up your tipple, that is a great place to pause me. So I want to talk just briefly about our Sqidoo, and I'm going to come in with some of my gray or my charcoal on the Sqidoo, and you'll notice that I'm just going to add a touch of gray on each side and leave a little bit of white in the center. I'm hoping that you can see that. I'm going to blow that up a little bit for you. So I'm going to come across here and add a little bit of that charcoal gray very, very lightly. Leave a little white in the center, and then notice I'm going to leave a little bit of darkness right here and right here. I'll do the same thing over here and just really get in there and add a little bit of darkness right on those edges. And you can see that that really changed the feel of the Sqidoo, yeah? So I'm going to turn my tile and I'm going to start to work on that one. So here I am. I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of that softness of the charcoal up the legs of that Sqidoo, and then I'm going to use it in here. Now notice I'm going to leave the light in the center here and in the center here, and then I'll add a little bit of darkness and a little bit of darkness right in here as well. I'll come in here and do the same thing, a little bit of dark, or rather light, my goodness, cat's got my tongue. A little bit of that nice light gray, and then I'll do a little bit of darkness right here and a little bit right here. And you can see what that does for that Sqidoo. I love that. And then I'll come to the last one right here and do the same thing. Now you saw that I had this little oopsortunity here. So I'm going to just treat it like the whole thing is just part of it. So I'm just going to go halfway in and halfway in, and then I'm going to give it a little bit of depth on each side, and it's just fine. It just works its way out, right? I really like the way this one is turning out. How fun is that? So cool. So if you need to take some time to finish up your Sqidoo, go ahead and do so, and I will see you in a minute. Okay, so now we're really getting into it. So we are going to start to work with our white Sqidoo Uniball pens. I love this pen, and it's a great pen to finish with because you can do so much with it. And I'm going to work mainly with the rose here on this. So I'm going to blow up the rose and make it nice and big for you. And I'm going to get that pen started now. You guys all know that I think this pen is super cranky, and it is, and mine is no exception to the rule. I definitely know that this pen can really be a challenge to work with. So what I'm going to start to do is I'm going to start to work now around the darkest parts of the rose, and you can see that I'm just starting to bring some of that light into the piece, and all I'm doing is really just auraing the line here, and then I'm going to start to add a couple of dots here and there. So I'll come in right over here and add a little bit of that white into here, and then maybe add a couple of dots, and then come over to this side and maybe add some white into this side and add a couple of dots. And then I'm just going to start to work my way around this flower. So you'll see that I'm just going into the darkest areas and then adding some reflectiveness in each of those dark areas. So you can see I'm getting in towards the center and adding some dots, adding a little bit of light in here, coming around into here. See, look at how pretty that is when you add some of that white into the darkness. It just starts to lift up that piece so much. So I'm just going around inside of the rose and just looking for the darkest parts. And it may be that you'll have to add a little bit more darkness to your rose just to get it to have that shimmer. And that's just fine. This is a great place to learn how to get those highlights to show up. You can't have the light without the dark, right? So you can see that I'm just kind of rolling through, adding some of that lightness. Couple of dots here, couple of dots there. Here's another one. Here's another one. So you can see that that really changes the face of that rose. It gives it such a shimmer, and it's really, really neat. So if you need to pause me here, this is a great place to pause me. Otherwise, I'm going to keep on going. So we're going to start to work with the mandala flower in here. And I'm just going to start to come around and give this a little bit more depth as well. So I'll come in towards the center of each of those petals here. And I need to get this pen to cooperate. So here I go. I'm just going to go around and add a little dot into where each petal starts to join. And that starts to give it a little bit of that nice highlight that works so well for this. Now, inside of these little petals right in here, the triangles, I think all I'm going to do is just do a couple of little lines, almost like a sprig in here. I think that's the name of the tangle, is sprig. So you can see I'm just going through and adding 3 lines, and each line gets a little bit smaller as I go. I'll turn my tile, do the same thing over here, do a little sprig in there. I'm not sure if this is sprig or zinger. I could be off. Oh, the names of Zentangle. So there we go. And didn't that just add so much to that little piece? I just think that putting in just a couple of little bits of white can really change the way we look at a piece, yeah? So now I'm going to start to come into where the darkness is on the green petals, and I'll add a little bit of white into where the darkness is. I'll go right in there as well. That just gives it a little bit more spark, a little bit more fun. So if you need to pause me here, this is a great place to do it. Otherwise, we're going to keep on rolling. Okay, so now we're going to start to work with our tipple just a little bit. And you can see that I'm working to get that pen to start going here. And I'm going to zoom in on these guys right over here. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit of a line right on the outside edge and a little bit of a dot. So just a little line and a little dot, just to make those glisten a little bit more. This one I won't be able to do much with. So I'll turn my piece here and I'll start to get into this one, and I'm going to look for a place where I can add a little bit of a highlight and a little bit of a dot. And a little bit of a highlight and a dot. Same thing over here. There's so much darkness in here that it just really makes the light pop. I'll do the same thing right in here. I really like the way this one came out. This is really fun. So I think I might add a little bit of white into where my sand swirl is as well, just to get that highlight to pop again. So I'm just going to come in and get a little bit of white going right in here to add a little extra sheen, and a little bit of white in here to get a little extra sheen. You can see that that just kind of gave that highlight a little bit of a boost. And I'll come over here and do the same thing. So I'm just turning my tile and adding a little bit more and a little bit more. I'll come over to this guy right here. He's got a lot of darkness in him, so it'll really make that highlight pop. You can really see all the fun parts of that composition coming together. Woohoo! So much fun! So take a moment, go around, do your highlights, and then we are going to rejoin and finish up the piece. I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so here we are. We are at the end of our time together, and the last thing that we have to do is to put our chop in to our piece. And you know that I like to hide my chop in my pieces, so you can see I've got this little spot right here. It's a great spot for my initial to go in, so I'm just going to go ahead and hide my little chop right there. And whenever I finish a piece, it kind of lets me know that I've finished a meditation. I've taken some time for myself in a very, very busy part of my life and taken care of myself, which I really treasure those moments where I recognize when I look back on pieces where I see I took the time to be good to myself, and that's really important. I love how differently these came out. They have a similarity to them, but different colors, and just really, really fun. I hope you enjoyed yourself. And if you are interested in checking out the Tangled Yogi shop, you can visit tangledyogi.com. Hopefully that is showing up here. And check out our Maryland tile. It's a really fun tile. You get 15 tiles for $12, and I think that's a pretty good deal. If you enjoyed the video, please give us a thumbs up or a nice review. It helps us to get more people to travel to our page at Tangled Yogi here on YouTube. So I thank you very much for joining me today, and I hope you had a great time. Once again, this is Rami Marks, your Tangled Yogi. Until we tangle again, I'll see you soon.